They told you the worst was over. You survived COVID. The fever broke, your oxygen levels stabilized, and after weeks or even months of fatigue, you finally felt like yourself again. Or at least you thought you did. But what if I told you that while you were celebrating recovery, your heart was quietly deteriorating? No warning signs, no crushing chest pain, no dramatic collapses. Just a slow, silent unraveling beneath the surface. It sounds absurd, even cruel, doesn't it? That a virus that didn't kill you outright may have set a ticking time bomb inside your chest? That's the terrifying truth doctors are now uncovering. COVID-19 wasn't just a respiratory illness. It was a cardiovascular saboteur, and for millions of so-called survivors, the real battle is just beginning. You may feel fine. You may walk, work, even exercise. But deep inside, your heart may be carrying scars that standard checkups miss entirely, until it's too late. It's not just about long COVID anymore. It's about long-term heart risk, the arrhythmias that sneak in at night, the silent inflammation in blood vessels, the weakened heart muscles that can suddenly fail. And the scariest part? This happens even in people with no prior heart disease, no warning history, and often no symptoms. You see, COVID-19 doesn't just attack the lungs. It's now known to infect the endothelial lining, the cells that coat your blood vessels, and trigger a cascade of damage. Think of it like corrosion in an engine. Your heart may look fine on the outside, but inside, there's rust spreading through the pipes. A recent study from the Department of Veterans Affairs tracked over 150,000 COVID survivors and found something shocking. Even a year after infection, their risk of heart failure, stroke, blood clots, and arrhythmia remained significantly elevated, regardless of age, weight, or even whether they had been hospitalized. That's right. Even people with mild or asymptomatic COVID showed signs of post-infection heart damage. So if you're over 50 and think you've gotten through it, think again. This is not a scare tactic. This is science catching up with reality. And the cardiologists seeing the aftershocks are growing deeply concerned. Dr. Ziad Al-Ali, the lead researcher in that landmark study, put it bluntly. We're seeing a tsunami of cardiovascular complications in people who thought they had recovered. And here's the kicker. Many of these patients don't seek help until they collapse unexpectedly, often misdiagnosed with anxiety or aging-related fatigue. But it's not in their heads. It's in their hearts. That racing pulse at night? That dizzy spell when standing up too quickly? That strange flutter in your chest? These could be red flags your heart is no longer operating like it used to, and that COVID left behind more than antibodies. It left battle wounds. I know this firsthand. One of my patients, let's call him James, was a 62-year-old retired firefighter. He was tough, disciplined, and had survived the Delta wave with little more than a cough. Months later, he started feeling lightheaded during walks. He brushed it off. Just getting older, he said. Until one morning, he passed out in his driveway. The ER found no blockage, no heart attack, but a cardiac MRI revealed something chilling. James's heart muscles had become inflamed and weakened post-COVID, a condition called myocarditis. He had no idea. And James is not alone. Across the country, cardiology clinics are seeing an influx of post-COVID survivors with mysterious symptoms. High blood pressure spikes, rapid heartbeats, unexplained fatigue. Many were never admitted to a hospital. Some had only mild symptoms. But the virus had done its work anyway, silently. You may be wondering, why isn't this on the news every night? Why isn't your doctor warning you about it? The answer lies in how medicine works. It takes time for data to catch up with daily practice. But the data is here now. And if you're over 60, if you have diabetes or high blood pressure, or if you've had COVID more than once, you need to treat your heart like it's been through trauma, even if no one told you it was. This isn't paranoia. It's preparedness. Because unlike COVID, which often strikes suddenly and visibly, post-COVID heart damage works in the shadows, quietly weakening your most vital organ until it reaches a breaking point. So if you've been feeling off lately, more tired than usual, more out of breath, waking up at night with your heart pounding, don't write it off. Don't assume it's aging. And don't wait for a heart attack to be your wake-up call. You survived COVID. But now it's time to ask, did your heart survive it too? The story behind the symptoms. Her name was Linda, 71 years old. She'd always been the picture of discipline. Woke up at 6 a.m. sharp, walked 3 miles each morning, tracked her meals, and even did Tai Chi twice a week. When COVID hit her household, she and her husband both got sick, but only mildly, some coughing, some fatigue. They quarantined, recovered, and moved on. Or so they thought. About 2 months later, Linda started feeling off. It began with shortness of breath on her daily walk, something she chalked up to lingering weakness. Then came the fatigue, so heavy some mornings she couldn't finish her tea without feeling dizzy. Her friends said she looked pale. Her daughter noticed she'd stopped using the stairs. Maybe it's just aging, Linda told herself, embarrassed to admit something was wrong. But one evening, while folding laundry, she blacked out. No warning, no pain, just darkness. Her husband found her on the floor, barely conscious. The ER doctor found no blockages, no stroke, no textbook emergency. But a deeper cardiac scan, thankfully ordered by a cautious cardiologist, revealed the truth. Linda had developed microvascular dysfunction and signs of post-viral myocarditis. Her heart had been inflamed for weeks. The electrical signals were struggling to keep rhythm. It wasn't aging. It wasn't stress. It was her heart, damaged in the silent aftermath of a virus she'd already beaten. I remember sitting across from her, watching her process the news. But I never even had chest pain, she whispered, tears welling up. And that's exactly the problem. Most people think heart trouble comes with drama. Tight chests, gasps, clutching pain. But the damage COVID leaves behind doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just whispers, fatigue, lightheadedness, weird heart flutters at night. And unless you know to listen, you miss it. Until it's too late. Linda's story is not rare. In fact, it's becoming painfully common. What's terrifying is how many people never get that second scan. How many go on thinking they're fine, until one day, their body disagrees. She's stable now, on medication, careful monitoring, a slower walking pace. But her heart will never be quite the same. And neither will her trust in the idea of full recovery. You see, for people like Linda, survival wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of a new kind of vigilance. Because sometimes the most dangerous damage is the one that happens after the applause has ended. Countdown of hidden risks. So what exactly are these hidden risks that doctors are now urging every COVID survivor, especially seniors, to take seriously? Let's count them down, because each one builds on the next like steps on a silent staircase, leading to a sudden fall. Risk number 5. Silent inflammation. It may not sound threatening, but after COVID, your body can stay in a low-grade inflammatory state for weeks or months. This means your heart and blood vessels could still be irritated and under pressure, even long after you've recovered. You might feel fine on the outside, but inside, your arteries may be inflamed, narrowing passageways and quietly laying the groundwork for a future clot or heart attack. Risk number 4. Microclots. Unlike large dramatic clots that make headlines, these are tiny, barely detectable by normal tests, but deadly over time. COVID survivors have been found to carry microclots that reduce blood flow in capillaries, especially in the heart and brain. Less blood means less oxygen, and more strain on your heart every time it beats. It's a problem that builds slowly, but one day, the dam can break. Risk number 3. Arrhythmias. These are abnormal heart rhythms that often sneak in after COVID. For some, it feels like a flutter. For others, it's a skipped beat or a pounding heart at night. 1 minute you're fine. The next, you're dizzy or short of breath. And while not all arrhythmias are dangerous, many are warning signs, especially if they begin only after a COVID infection. Risk number 2. Heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, HFpEF. A long name for a dangerous trend. This kind of heart failure doesn't show up like the classic type. Your heart still pumps, but it gets stiff and struggles to fill properly. Post-COVID, this form of heart damage is being seen even in people with no prior heart history. The scary part? It often mimics just being tired. Many seniors are being misdiagnosed with anxiety, menopause symptoms, or simple aging when in fact, their heart is quietly failing to do its job. And finally, risk number 1, sudden cardiac events. This is the one that haunts emergency rooms. No build-up. No warnings. A heart that was doing fine suddenly stops. And when doctors investigate, they often find scarring or damage linked to prior COVID inflammation. It's the cruelest twist of all, because these people were walking, talking, living their lives, until one moment changed everything. Hard truths and hope. The hardest truth to accept is this: even if you did everything right, got vaccinated, rested, took your vitamins, followed doctor's orders, COVID may have still left your heart vulnerable. It's not your fault. And yet, it feels like a betrayal, doesn't it? To survive something terrifying, only to discover months later that the real danger was waiting in the shadows? That's how Harold felt. At 68, he was the image of post-retirement vitality. Golfed every Saturday, volunteered at the library, and danced with his wife at every family wedding. He thought he'd beat COVID when his symptoms faded in just a week. But months later, while raking leaves, he felt a tightness in his chest and collapsed. The doctors called it a silent cardiac event, likely triggered by post-COVID scarring on his heart. Harold lived, but everything changed. The man who once walked 5 miles a day now carries nitroglycerin in his pocket. And the scariest part? He had no history of heart disease, no high blood pressure, no diabetes, no warning, just the lingering fingerprints of a virus that played by no rules. But here's where the hope begins, because knowledge is power. You can't change the past, but you can screen for hidden damage. Cardiologists now recommend that seniors who've had COVID, especially those who notice new fatigue, dizziness, or heart palpitations, ask for more than just a stethoscope check. Push for an echocardiogram, a cardiac MRI, or a stress test. Look beyond the basics. Even subtle clues can reveal early dysfunction. There's also promising research emerging. Anti-inflammatory medications, lifestyle interventions, and even targeted cardiac rehab have shown success in helping post-COVID hearts heal. And for those still in the fog of fatigue and fear, you are not alone. There's a growing field of specialists, long COVID clinics, who understand that recovery isn't just about breathing again, it's about living again. Harold joined one of those programs. His stamina improved. His confidence returned. And while he'll never go back to before COVID, he's now better informed and better protected. Because the goal is no longer just survival. It's prevention. It's early detection. It's refusing to be blindsided again. The truth is painful, yes. But it's not hopeless. You see, the damage COVID caused may have been invisible. But your response doesn't have to be. Every walk you take, every glass of water, every follow-up test, every question you ask your doctor, it all matters now more than ever. Because there is a window of healing. But only if you open it in time. So if you're reading this and something inside you whispers, maybe I should get checked, listen to it. That whisper might just save your life. Final reflection and call to action. What if surviving wasn't the end of your story, but the beginning of your second chance? That's the question I ask every patient who walks into my clinic thinking the worst is behind them. Because here's the thing no one wants to say out loud: survival doesn't always mean you're safe. And after COVID, that illusion of safety can be the most dangerous trap of all. You see, your heart doesn't raise its hand and scream when it's hurting. It endures. It compensates. It keeps working until it can't. And for too many seniors, the only sign they get is the last one. But that doesn't have to be your fate. The power lies in what you do now. Not next year. Not after your next checkup. No. If you've ever had COVID, mild or severe, pause for a moment and look inward. Have you felt more tired lately? Do stairs feel harder than they used to? Does your heart race at night for no reason? These aren't random signs. They're messages. And your job, the job of someone who has survived, is to listen. Get the tests. Ask the questions. Don't let embarrassment, fear, or even pride stop you from protecting the one muscle you can't live without. Talk to your doctor. Request a heart screening. Push for an evaluation beyond "you're fine." Because sometimes, fine isn't enough. And if you love someone who's had COVID, your spouse, your father, your grandmother. Don't assume they'll speak up if something feels off. Encourage them. Be the voice that helps them catch the damage before it catches them. Share this story. Print it, email it, talk about it at dinner. One quiet conversation could spark a life-saving decision. Think about that. Think about what it would mean to know that you helped someone avoid a silent heart failure, a stroke, a sudden collapse that nobody saw coming. And if this article has opened your eyes, even a little, then let it guide your next step. Not with fear, but with purpose. You already do. Now that you know the truth nobody warned you about when you were sent home from the hospital or when your cough finally faded, what can you actually do about it? That's where this part matters most. Because awareness without action is just anxiety. But awareness with action, that's how you take your power back. So let's make this real. If you've had COVID once or multiple times, and especially if you're over 60, diabetic, hypertensive, or simply feel off in ways you can't quite explain, start here. First, schedule a heart-focused checkup. Not just a regular blood pressure reading or cholesterol test, but a thorough cardiovascular assessment. Ask for an echocardiogram to see how your heart is pumping. Request an electrocardiogram, ECG, to detect irregular rhythms. If your fatigue or breathlessness persists, consider pushing for a cardiac MRI, the gold standard for spotting inflammation or scarring. Second, document your symptoms daily for 2 weeks. It may feel silly, but writing down episodes of palpitations, dizziness, or unusual fatigue could be the missing puzzle piece your doctor needs. Sometimes, what feels like random tiredness is actually early-stage heart strain. Third, monitor your resting heart rate, especially in the morning before you rise, and your blood pressure. A sudden spike or unusual drop might reveal lingering vascular effects of COVID. Technology can be your ally here. A basic fitness tracker with heart rate monitoring can alert you to changes long before they become medical emergencies. Fourth, examine your sleep. Many post-COVID heart complications worsen at night. Do you wake up with your heart pounding? Do you feel unrest despite sleeping through the night? These could signal underlying issues like arrhythmia or sleep apnea, a condition that further strains your already stressed heart. If this sounds familiar, request a sleep study. It's not just about rest. It's about survival. Fifth, don't downplay new emotional changes. Depression, anxiety, and brain fog after COVID aren't just psychological. They're deeply tied to cardiovascular and neurological recovery. Stress hormones like cortisol can skyrocket in the months after infection, further taxing your heart. If you're feeling withdrawn, irritable, or unusually overwhelmed, don't ignore it. Your brain and your heart are more connected than you think. And finally, move. Gently but consistently. You don't need to run a marathon, but walking, stretching, breathing deeply, these are not preservation is. Because your story isn't over yet, let me leave you with this. Something deeply personal that I've seen too many times to forget. It's the face of someone who didn't make it, not because they lacked strength, not because they ignored their health, but because they trusted that recovery meant complete safety. They believed that once the fever left and the cough disappeared, they were in the clear. But COVID is a master of deception. It lets the body feel healed while quietly altering the most vital rhythms of life. That's what makes this moment so urgent. Not fearful, but focused. You are here reading this because you survived. And now you're holding something that most people ignore until it's too late. Awareness. That awareness makes you dangerous to the disease. It makes you powerful. Because now you can act. Now you can speak. You can be the reason someone else gets a heart test. You can be the reason a spouse finally books their checkup. You can be the voice in the living room that says, "Let's not wait." This is more than a medical issue. This is a moment of generational wisdom. You've lived through decades of health fads, changing science, medical discoveries. And now you're facing a new era where the damage isn't always visible. But that doesn't mean it's invisible to you. If you've felt that tug in your chest, if you've wondered why you just don't feel like yourself months after recovering, if you've been brushing off the voice inside that says, something isn't right, stop. Listen. Not to fear, but to truth. Your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. And it's asking for care, for recognition, for a second chance. not just to survive but to truly heal. And if you're lucky enough to still wake up each morning, don't waste that breath. Use it to question, to protect, to honor the body that carried you through one of history's most devastating pandemics. Maybe your heart isn't beating the same way it used to. That's okay. That just means it needs you now more than ever. So let this article be more than words on a screen. Let it be a turning point, a spark, a reason to do something today that your future self or your family will thank you for. Book that test. Ask that question. Share that truth. And if this message hit you in the gut, if it made you pause, don't walk away unchanged. Because stories like Harold's, Linda's, and James's aren't just anecdotes. They're warnings. They're wake-up calls. And maybe, just maybe, they're mirrors. So take the next step, whatever that means for you. Because your story isn't over. And if your heart is still beating right now, then let that beat be the beginning, not the end.